Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if God like Naruto got a harem with Anko, Shizuka, Tayuya, Temari and Hinata? If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's start. Chapter 1. Konoha was in shambles. Orochimaru and his sound ninja had allied with Suna to attack the Leaf Village. They had made their first strike during the Chunin exams. Their secret weapon Gaara had run off with the last Uchiha following not far behind. Orochimaru had trapped the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, in a barrier that killed anyone it touched. Sarutobi was now fighting Orochimaru with his summon-turned weapon ally Enma. "Orochimaru, I will not let you destroy the Leaf Village," said Snake only chuckled. "Sarutobi-sensei, do you honestly think you will be able to stop me? I have everything planned to bring about Konoha's doom." Sarutobi stared at him until Orochimaru pulled off a few hand seals. Kinjutsu, Junsei Tensai, Forbidden Jutsu, Perfect Rebirth. Sarutobi eyes widened. A perfect rebirth technique. Orochimaru smirked at his old sensei's expression. "Ah, I see you understand, sensei. This will bring back any person who I so desire to be born again. And all I have to do is sacrifice 2 souls to the Shinigami, not a bad deal if you ask me, especially with whom I ask the Shinigami to bring back." Sarutobi stared at his student in horror, thinking of all the possible people he could bring back. "Who did you reincarnate?" Brrrn. The two were still locked with their weapons pushing against each other. Orochimaru chuckled. "The greatest heroes of the Leaf, Minato Namikaze, and Kushina Uzumaki." He began to cackle as he saw his former sensei's face. "You monster, how dare you use this village's greatest heroes as its destruction?" Sarutobi was grinding his teeth in anger. "I dare, because I want to see Konoha burn, and it will be so enjoyable to see it burn at their hands. They are mine to control until they see the person that was most precious to them in life. Even then they will have to fight my control. Ah, it seems that the jutsu is finally kicking in." He looked behind Sarutobi and pushed his sword strong enough to jump back as Sarutobi looked behind him. 2 piles of ash were forming together and taking on a human shape. The first shape was clearly male while the other was female. The bodies were completely made of ash, but were slowly tuning to a flesh-like substance. The male version grew spiky blonde hair while the female grew crimson-red hair. More ashes formed around them as they began to seem more human. The male figure now had on a long white trench coat while the woman had on an Anbu captain uniform. And then finally, the ashes turned to what they were intended, revealing Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. "Go, destroy the Leaf Village." The two complied and jumped through a recent opening in the barrier. Sarutobi was about to follow them when Orochimaru continued his assault. Sarutobi seethed in rage. "Minato, Kushina, I only hope you can break free of his control." Naruto was heading back to the arena. He had just helped defeat Gaara. Kyuubi had pumped enough chakra through his system to get him back up on his feet, and damn be him if he missed out on kicking some sound ninja. Naruto climbed over the arena walls and jumped in, to see dozens of Konoha shinobi dead, being stood over by the same man who ruined his life, with a red-haired woman beside him. He was about to move back, but the chakra of the Kyuubi stopped pumping through his body, causing him to lose his balance and fall into the arena. Once he landed, crack, he heard a resounding crack in his left leg. He grabbed his leg, barely noticing the 2 shinobi running towards him. He watched as the red-haired woman drew her katana, while the Yondaime pulled out an odd-looking kunai. He just watched them as time seemed to slow. A second felt like eternity at that moment. He saw the kunai being raised to kill him. The katana swung down. He closed his eyes. "So, this is how it ends." He opened his eyes to see the incoming blades. "This is how I die." He closed his eyes, and awaited death's embrace. He didn't care he was about to die anymore. It would relieve him of the hell he was forced to live. He would never be called a demon again. He would never have to ask himself if his parents ever loved him. He would never have to wonder if they abandoned him. He would be free at last, and so with that last thought he waited for the blades that would end his life, and send him to whatever planes Kami had deemed him be sent. It never came. He opened his eyes to see that the katana was right at his throat, barely touching his skin, and the kunai was but an inch away from killing him. He saw the faces of the weapon's wielder, the Yondaime. Why did he look so much like him? And the woman, with eyes the same color as his own, why were they staring at him? Why weren't they finishing him off? Why wasn't the Yondaime taking revenge for his death? Why? The two stared at him, then the woman went wide-eyed as a single tear went down her face. The Yondaime began to cry a bit a moment later. Naruto, the woman stuttered out, as if asking a question. Naruto was shocked. How did they know him? Did they remember him? Did they remember that he is the holder of a demon? The Yondaime and the woman dropped their weapons, and the Yondaime spoke, "My son." The woman spoke next, "My baby." Naruto was shocked beyond measure. They knew his name, and called him their child, but, no, he had no parents. The villagers said he was a demon. And demons have no parents. But, he wasn't a demon, no, he was a Jinchuriki. But someone with such noble blood as the Yondaime wouldn't be treated like a monster, would he? Naruto looked back up as the woman embraced him. "Oh Naruto, I'm so sorry we couldn't be there for you. I'm just so glad you're safe. I know it must have been hard to hear that your parents were dead, and at such a young age too." Naruto didn't make any move to hug her. Minato walked forward and looked into his son's eyes. "Naruto, why aren't you happy to see your parents? Surely when Sarutobi told you about us you wished to see us again. Why are you so sad?" Minato just stared as Naruto began to mumble something out. Ogg knew, he knew my parents. They just stared at their son as he began trembling. Kushina tried to hug her son again but he jumped back and screamed, "No, my parents abandoned me." The two were shocked. Did he honestly think that? No child with blood as noble as the Yondaime would be treated like a monster. They went wide-eyed as he fell to his knees trembling. "Lies, lies, lies," he kept repeating the same thing. Minato was about to try to speak to Naruto. Boom! Minato and Kushina turned around to see a sound nin with about 12 more behind him scream, "Daikaiubi brat!" He threw a kunai he had in his hands at Naruto. Naruto watched as the kunai came. He would be free at last, no more lies, no more suffering. The kunai was 12 feet away from him. Clang! The kunai was sliced out of the air by Kushina. "Stay thee away from my son." She ran forward with Minato following. Naruto stared as the woman cut down the first sound ninja. They called him son. Minato shoved a kunai into one of their heads. They protected him. Kushina sliced a sound ninja down the middle, but they had to be lying. Minato flashed behind another sound ninja and cut his throat, spraying blood everywhere. He wasn't supposed to be loved. Kushina and Minato stabbed through opposite sides of the same sound nin. He wasn't supposed. Minato kicked a ninja into the air as Kushina came down to slice him in half. To have a family, they cut down the last sound nin. It has to be a lie. Kushina and Minato ran to their son and grabbed his shoulders. Naruto, are you okay?" Naruto just stared at them muttering the same thing, "Lies, lies, lies." His eyes rolled into the back of his head as he fell over. "Naruto." Kushina grabbed him. "Minato-kun, we have to get him to the hospital." The two quickly scaled the wall and cut down any sound nin in their path to get their only child to the hospital. The next day, Kushina and Minato were waiting outside their son's hospital room. The doctors had asked that they wait until they could judge what his condition was. The two were seething in rage at what happened when they reached the hospital. Flashback. Minato slammed open the doors as Kushina followed him into the hospital lobby. They ran up to the desk as more and more people came in. All of them were shocked to see Minato was alive. Minato was at the lobby desk in under a minute of walking in. "I need a hospital room now." The receptionist looked at the Yondaime in glee. "Ah, Yondaime-sama, it's so good to see that you are alive. I would be glad to help you with any person who needs assistance." The receptionist smiled and Kushina walked forward. "He needs medical attention immediately." She looked down at Naruto. When she looked up she saw the sneer being directed towards her son. That demon. The only reason that this hospital has ever allowed him entrance before is because the Sandaime had Anbu enforcing it. "I have no idea why they keep the monster alive, it's just a stain on our village." The receptionist was about to continue her rant when her collar was grabbed by Minato. "Now you listen and you listen well, he is not a demon. So I suggest that you back off and get him a hospital room before I." His rant was cut off when a young woman came up to Kushina and grabbed Naruto. The woman glared at the receptionist. "I thought I made it very clear last time we spoke, Haruno. if Naruto is ever to enter the hospital with an injury you are to contact either me, or one of his doctors. This is the last straw Haruno. I expect your uniform by the end of the day, you're fired. She brought Naruto through a black door on the other side of the lobby as she was followed by Minato and Kushina. End flashback. Minato was twirling his kunai while Kushina was sharpening her katana. They remained silent until, Minato plunged his kunai into the wall with enough force that it sent spider web-like cracks through the wall. Why does the village hate our child? I made it perfectly clear that he was to be seen as a hero for holding the Kyuubi at bay. Minato was clutching the kunai so tightly that the metal was being bent by the force of it. Kushina sighed in anger. I don't know Minato, but why didn't he know we were his parents? We told Sarutobi that should either of us die he was to tell Naruto who his parents were at 7. And wasn't Jiraiya supposed to take care of him? As a matter of fact, why has no one come to see Naruto? Shouldn't he have loads of friends? She would have continued her rant when she saw Sarutobi walking down the hall. Minato and Kushina walked up to the Sandaime and stopped right in front of him. We want answers Sarutobi, and you will give us them. Sarutobi was sweating but stood his ground. Ask away. Minato crossed his arms over his chest. Did you tell Naruto we were his parents like we asked you? Sarutobi began to sweat. Well it's a yes or no question, answer it. Sarutobi looked down. No, Minato glared at Sarutobi deeply. Why? Sarutobi sighed. I didn't feel he was ready to know at the time. Kushina grabbed him by his shirt. You had no right to say whether he was ready to know or not. We told you to tell him when he was 7. He is probably 12 years old now. You should have told him years ago Sarutobi. Now for our next question, why does he have his own personal doctors and hospital room? Sarutobi sighed. Naruto has had several attempts on his life when he was admitted to the hospital by my own ninja and doctors. I had to set up a personal medical unit for him after the 7th attempt. Kushina flipped out. Your own shinobi tried to kill him. What kind of shinobi can't tell the difference between a container and the contained? My son is not a demon, so why did they think he is one? And how many times had he been admitted to the hospital? Sarutobi began to sweat at that point. He was about to answer when the nurse came up and spoke. I will show you all of his medical files. Minato and Kushina smiled, but Sarutobi snapped at her. Kagome, I made it very clear that regardless of who asked for those files they were never to be viewed. Kagome just glared at Sarutobi. They are his parents Sarutobi, they are his legal guardians now, not you. I wanted to adopt him so many times but the damn civilian council kept on blocking me. So I suggest you shut up, I am tired of not being able to help him. Now that his parents are alive you no longer have authority over those files. Sarutobi wanted to retort but Minato just glared at him. We will have words Hiruzen. They followed the nurse as Sarutobi waited outside Naruto's hospital room. With Minato and Kushina. Minato was twitching in rage. How dare Sarutobi deny his last wishes? That old fool would be getting a piece of his mind when he was finished here. Kushina was debating on whether to cut the old man to pieces or just use a summoning jutsu to feed him to one of her lesser summons. Kagome stopped in front of a door. She seemed hesitant to go in, but opened the door. Minato and Kushina followed her into the room to find a 20 by 20 room filled with filing cabinets. So which one is Naruto's? The nurse looked down as a tear fell down her cheek. They're all Naruto's. WHAAAAT. Kushina yelled as Minato ran to the first cabinet, a panicked expression on his face. Kushina ran to another one as she found some files. Minato pulled out one dated October 10th. Naruto was 5 years old then. He opened the file to found notes and a tape. He looked to see a television in the room. He walked over and pushed the tape in. When the tape began to play he is mortified. His son was tied to a cross with barbed wire around his wrists and ankles and was being covered in gasoline. He watched to see that everyone who was doing it had black ski masks on, so he couldn't tell who did it. Just when he thought things couldn't get worse he saw them light a match and throw it on him. The gasoline must have only been placed on certain parts of his body because the fire followed a line and burned his flesh. The fire made a bunch of cross shapes in his flesh. Not a moment later an Anbu came in and cut down the masked assailants. The Anbu carefully doused the fire on the screaming blonde. The Anbu then cut the barbed wire and spoke, "Naruto, why can you never be given a break?" The Anbu was about to jump off when he saw the camera. He grabbed the camera and turned it off. Minato was sick to his stomach. He ran to a trash can and wretched, or at least tried to. Kushina looked through file after file, each one making her cry even harder. The first one showed the details of when Naruto was beaten near death. 5 broken ribs, a fractured femur, and a kunai shoved into his lung, released the next day. The next one he was hung by his wrists and beaten with bats, both arms broken, every rib shattered, fractured skull, released next day. The next one was when a group of Uchiha tied Naruto to a training post. He had 17 stab wounds from kunai, 30 from shuriken and 12 from arrows, released next day. She couldn't take looking at them anymore and fell to the floor, crying her eyes out. Minato walked up to her and picked her up. "We are going to see our son, now." He walked out of the room with Kushina following. Once they got to Naruto's hospital room, they saw Sarutobi standing in front of the door. "Move, Sarutobi." Kushina was not in the mood for his bullshit. "Kushina, we need to wait for Naruto to heal. Once he is healed I will." Crack, he was slapped across the face with a chakra-charged palm that sent Sarutobi to the side. She pushed open the door to find nothing. They ran around the room and looked, but could not find Naruto anywhere. They then noticed that the window was wide open. They walked out of the room and grabbed Sarutobi. "You will take us to where Naruto lives now." Sarutobi was ready to speak against it when an Anbu appeared next to them. "Hokage-sama, the council has been arranged and wish to speak to you in regards to the recent invasion as well as several other events. They can wait until I deem I will go." Minato was about to walk out of the hospital when Sarutobi grabbed his shoulder. "I will send one of my trusted Anbu to check up on him. It's not a good idea to keep the council waiting." Minato slapped his hand away but complied. They then walked to the council chambers. Kushina and Minato were pissed. Chapter 2. Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki were walking through the streets of Konoha. Each second was slowly grating on their already short nerves. Every conversation they heard was insulting their only child. "Hey look, it's the Yondaime. Yeah, he must have come back for revenge. Ha, finally, now that demon brat will finally die. Soon the demon will be gone. Hope he has that thing publicly executed for its crimes towards Out Village." Kushina was gripping her katana like a vice as they grew closer to the Hokage Tower. They wanted to go see their child, but the council was calling. Sarutobi had better hope nothing happens to their son. They had lost what little patience they had with this village and were considering leaving it with their child. After half an hour of walking through rubble and wreckage, they were finally in front of the Hokage Tower. The cage tower looked to be in better shape than the rest of the village. Minato didn't care at this point. All he wanted was to get this council meeting over and done with so he could see his son. Kushina wanted to go and slaughter half the village at that point. The two followed Sarutobi up the steps as they went to the council chambers. The halls were littered with glass and broken vases. They arrived in front of the council chambers. Minato wasted no time and kicked the council room doors open. The council members were shocked to see the Yondaime and the Red Death. Many council members were grinning ear to ear, some at the fact that the Yondaime had returned, others thinking that he had a way to kill the demon brat. Other male council members were eyeing Kushina like she was a piece of meat. The shinobi heads were quivering in fear, knowing that the Yondaime could take down any one of them. The first to speak was the Sandame's advisor and teammate Kaharu. "Ah, Yondaime-sama, I see that you are doing well." Minato stared at Kaharu, with barely veiled contempt. "Yes, I am doing quite well, thank you very much. I would like to know what this meeting is about. I have other matters to attend to." Kaharu flinched at the cold tone but kept her demeanor. The one who spoke next was another of Sarutobi's advisors, Homura. "Yondaime-sama, we have conversed this for many a meeting and all of the civilian council as well as Danzo has come to a unanimous decision. We wish for you to kill the demon that goes by the name Naruto Uzumaki." Minato and Kushina were practically shaking in rage, but they managed to keep a calm demeanor as Minato began to interrogate them. "And why, pray tell, would any of you think that Naruto Uzumaki is a demon?" The one who answered was a civilian council member. "Oh please, how can he not be a demon? He has the 9-tailed fox sealed in his body, he causes mischief all around Konoha, he even has those whisker marks to prove he is a demon. What more proof is needed that he is the demon that killed all our loved ones? Minato glared at the council member, releasing a small amount of killing intent. So, let me see if I understand here, you want me to kill him because I sealed a demon in his belly. Danzo spoke up. Yondaime-sama, I must insist, why kill him when you can give him to me? I can train him to be Konoha's ultimate weapon of destruction. Kushina gripped her blade's hilt so tight it was leaving marks in her hand. A civilian council member spoke up, Danzo, we have been through this, it is too dangerous to be controlled, it must be killed. Minato was gripping his kunai pouch, waiting for the right moment. Kaharu spoke up, be that as it mat Yondaime-sama, it is too dangerous to allow the demon to live. So by the order of the council, we are demanding that the demon, Naruto Uzumaki be terminated. That's it. Minato and Kushina were holding every last ounce of killing intent they could handle, but that did not help drop the bloodlust in their voices, much to the confusion of the civilians and the terror of the shinobi. So, you, the council, are demanding me, the Hokage, to kill an innocent child, all because I sealed the Kyuubi no Kitsune in his body. Minato glared at the council, and they could have sworn they saw a fire light in his eyes. And just what makes you think you can demand me, to kill my son? Minato jumped over the table and ripped out a kunai while Kushina pulled out her katana. Minato shoved the kunai into Kaharu's neck while Kushina impaled Homura before slicing him up the middle. The civilians tried to run but were immediately cut down by an extremely pissed off Kushina or a very angry Minato. By the end of the fight the entire council chamber was covered in blood and corpses, the only ones still living being the clan heads and Sarutobi. Kushina's katana was covered in blood, while Minato's fists were bleeding from the knuckles because of how many people he punched square in the mouth. Sarutobi was off to the side as he watched as they kicked the bodies out of their way as they walked over to him. Minato grabbed Sarutobi by the front of his cloak and brought him up to his face, you will take us to our son, now. Sarutobi swallowed and answered, Minato, my Anbu are watching him, you need to, crunch, Sarutobi was shut up as Kushina punched him right in the nose. We want to see our son Sarutobi, take us to him now. Sarutobi looked as Kushina placed her katana at his throat, making a small cut to make her point. Sarutobi swallowed as he began quivering. All right, follow me. He stood up as Minato and Kushina followed him out the council chambers, while the remaining clan heads tried to keep themselves from passing out at the sight of all the blood. Sume was trying to wake up Kuromaru while trying to remain awake herself. Okay, does anybody else think things are going to turn out bad? The one who spoke was Shikaku, who was trembling like a leaf. Honestly, Sume, do you even think it's necessary to ask that? Sume finally couldn't take it anymore and retched up her last meal. Inoichi looked away as Hiyashi spoke next. I can honestly say that this village shot itself in the foot. Everyone nodded while Choza raised his hand. What is it, Choza? Choza looked down ashamed. Can I go change my pants? Everyone went wide-eyed at that. They then noticed the smell in the air. They all looked at each other before they all began to retch. No one noticed Choza walk away awkwardly. With Minato and Kushina. Minato and Kushina were releasing substantial amounts of killing intent, forcing the villagers to get back as they tried to come closer to them. Their rage only increased as they went through the red light district. The red light district was a one-way R. Sarutobi better not have set their child up in this place. But as they went further and further into the neighborhood they realized that their son did in fact live here, because Sarutobi made no motion to turn any direction at every street and alley. Minato watched as his wife began to finger her katana ever so lightly, waiting for a reason to carve up the old man. Sarutobi finally stopped when he noticed a group of people standing in front of the worst apartment complex in the red light district. He growled in aggravation as he stalked up to the group of bums. I thought I told you lot to stay away from this apartment. The bum in the front, who was smoking a cigar and had the rattiest clothes on, spoke up. Piss off, old man, we're the only ones in this village who take care of Naruto, and in turn he takes care of us, no matter how many times we tell him it was charity. He went back to smoking his cigar. The Sandaime was about to force them to move when the Yondaime pushed him out of the way. You know Naruto. Please, how is he doing? The man looked at him and took out his cigar. What's it to you? He moved his hand towards his pocket. Kushina noticed that he was in a defensive stance. Minato gritted his teeth in rage. He's my son, that's what it is to me. The other bums looked at Minato before they stood up and got into defensive stances. Sarutobi snapped his fingers as 3 Anbu appeared. Anbu, arrest them. The Anbu were about to move forwards when they were immediately stopped by a dose of killing intent from Kushina. The Anbu immediately backed off, knowing that Kushina could easily kill them. Sarutobi looked towards Kushina. Kushina, these men live on the street, they have no sense of morals or justice, having them near Naruto will only hurt him. Kushina glared at Sarutobi. And having him near the villagers is so much better, shut the up old man. I am not going to let your Anbu hurt these men when they have been taking care of my son. Kushina turned back to the bums to see they were still in defensive positions. Please, where is Naruto, where is my baby? The bum in the back scoffed. Where is your baby, where have you been all these years? If he really is your son, then why haven't you been taking care of him? Kushina began to tear up as Minato answered. We were dead, Orochimaru brought us both back to life to destroy the Leaf Village. We managed to break free of his control when we saw our son. Please, where is he? The lead bum simply sighed. He's upstairs, Loli is taking care of him. He had a nervous breakdown as soon as he got inside his apartment. You can go in, but make sure you don't hurt him. Loli would go nuts if anything were to happen to him. The bums stepped aside to let Minato and Kushina through, but immediately blocked the Sandame from walking any further. Move, the bums didn't move. As your Hokage, I am ordering you to move. The Sandame was shut up by a dose of killing intent as a black knife was placed at his throat by the lead bum. The bum glared at the Sandame and said only a few words. Not this time. The bums surrounded Sarutobi and brought out a few knives. Their stances suggested they were retired shinobi. Sarutobi sighed and waited for Minato and Kushina to leave the building. Meanwhile, Minato was about ready to run outside and break Sarutobi's neck. The entire building was infested with roaches, the walls were crumbling. Hell, a few more years and the building would have collapsed on itself. They looked around until they found a door that was partially open and had demon written all over it. Kushina opened the door to find that the apartment was trashed. She looked around to see that there was a bit of blood on the floor. She heard someone talking and went to a door. She looked inside to see Naruto sitting on his bed with an emotionless expression on. He was still wearing his hospital gown. There was a woman wearing a skimpy outfit next to him. She seemed to be trying to comfort him. Kushina tried to get a closer look in the room and ended up opening the door wide open. Naruto snapped his head towards Kushina and went wide-eyed. He unconsciously gripped tighter onto the woman next to him. The woman smiled at the blonde and removed his hands before giving him a kiss on his head. Kushina snarled at the woman as she sauntered over to the door and closed it behind her. She took a deep breath before she snapped around and glared at Minato and Kushina. You had better have one really good reason for coming here, woman. If you are here to hurt Naruto, she pulled out a retractable dagger, then you can expect to get carved open. Kushina glared at the woman and spoke. Just what the hell makes you think I would kill my own son? The woman raised an eyebrow before she spoke. You're his mother. Kushina nodded her head. You bitch. She slugged Kushina right in the face, sending her toppling over the already broken couch. Kushina tried to stand up but was pinned down by the woman as Minato tried to remove her. Where the have you been all these years? You have no idea what Naruto had to go through because he had no family. How dare you come back here expecting him to just walk into your arms? In fact, how do I know you aren't going to hurt him and are using his desperation for family to do it? Kushina kicked the woman off of her and started to speak. I was dead, okay, the only reason I am alive is because Orochimaru brought me and my husband back to life. The woman narrowed her eyes and asked who her husband was. Kushina pointed to the Yondaime. For a moment the woman looked at him before she snarled in contempt. She ripped out another dagger and was about to charge at him, but Kushina grabbed her before she could. Why are you trying to kill my husband? The woman snarled out her response. Because it's his fault. Naruto has never known a moment's peace in his entire life. After he sealed Kyuubi in Naruto, the village demanded Naruto's death. Kushina was wide-eyed at that while Minato was gritting his teeth in rage. I asked them to see Naruto as a hero. Is the dying wish of a Hokage not worth anything anymore? Minato was pacing the floor while pulling his hair out. He kept on going through everything that he had heard in the last 24 hours. He finally stopped pacing and turned towards the woman, a pleading look on his face. Please, I need to talk to him. We, addressing Kushina, need to talk to him, please. The woman just looked at the two. She had been a kunoichi before she retired and was forced to whore herself off to make some change, so she knew when people were lying. Neither of them showed any signs of deceit or hatred, the least she could do was give them a chance. Sigh, 5 minutes, nothing more. Kushina smiled as Minato nodded his head. They walked up to the door behind the woman. Kushina was curious about something. What is your name? The woman smiled before answering. Loli, 5 minutes. She opened the door and looked at Naruto, who was still shocked. She sauntered over to him and kneeled in front of him. Naruto, these two wish to speak with you. Naruto looked extremely nervous as he began to clutch his hospital gown. Don't worry, she clasped onto his hand, I'll be right outside. Naruto nodded his head as Loli walked past Kushina and Minato, giving them a stern look as she passed by, closing the door behind her. Naruto looked at the two before he broke out one of his usual grins. So, what did you two want to talk about? Naruto watched as the two nervously looked at each other. Kushina spoke up as she sat down on the floor, followed by Minato. Naruto, I know that the Sandaime never told you, but we are your parents. Naruto grinned again and answered with a clearly strained demeanor. Look, I know that you two must hate me for the Kyuubi being sealed inside of me, but I think that you are going a little too far in trying to hurt me. My parents are either dead or abandoned me, so you can stop pretending. Naruto got up but stopped his walk towards the door as Minato spoke. We don't hate you, son, and we were dead. But a jutsu Orochimaru used managed to bring us back to life. We almost killed you, but when we saw you we broke free of Orochimaru's control. Please son, please. We truly are your parents. Naruto just looked at the Yondaime. Look, Yondaime-sama, I know that you must hate me for being the cause of your demise, and I understand fully if you hate me. But is it really necessary for you to pose as my parents just to make my life miserable? If you wanted to make my life miserable you could just order your shinobi to beat me like the villagers do, I doubt they would mind. Kushina stood up so fast it made Naruto flinch. How can you say that? Naruto was about to reply but he noticed tears in Kushina's eyes. We really are your parents, Naruto, please. Kushina walked over and got to eye level with Naruto. Naruto, please, I remember the joy I felt when I carried you in my womb. I remember the happiness your father showed on the day you were born. I remember when I held you in my arms for the first time. Please, Naruto my baby, please believe us. Kushina was letting the tears fall just a bit faster. Naruto only looked at her for a second. I'm sorry miss, but I don't believe you. Please, just leave. Naruto walked over to his bed and sat down. Kushina was about to walk over to him when the door opened to show Loli. I'm sorry, but your time is up. Please come out here. Kushina turned to her son. She dried her eyes for a moment as she followed Minato out the door. Loli closed the door as she escorted them both to leave Naruto's apartment. Before she closed the door, Loli turned towards Minato and Kushina. Look, I don't know if you two really are his parents or not, but for now it would probably be best if you left him alone. I'm sorry. Loli closed the door as gently as she could. Kushina turned towards Minato. Before Minato could even move, Kushina slammed her face into his chest and began crying more than she had ever cried before. Minato wrapped his arms around his wife as he let a few tears fall. Minato glared at his village through the open window in the apartment complex. Damn you Konoha, damn you. He let his tears fall as he and his wife slumped to the floor. Minato glared at the ground. There are a few people I wish to speak to, starting with you, Jiraiya-sensei. The next day, Minato had ordered a few med-nin Anbu bring Naruto to the hospital to make sure his injuries recovered properly. He had retaken the position of Hokage to make sure his son was not injured by the villagers. Kushina had gone to the academy to teach the upstarting kunoichi. The academy had become extremely lax in his absence. Minato was shaking in even more rage as he looked through all of Naruto's files. There were times he didn't show up for class to arrive the next day with broken bones. There were times he showed up to be beaten by one of the many instructors. He was going to have a serious talk with the instructors. Minato was currently waiting to speak with several people. All of them had a connection with his son, and it would help him decide whether or not he would continue being Hokage, or find a successor and protect his son. He looked at the ones who he would be speaking to. Jiraiya the Gamma Sennin, his sensei, and Naruto's godfather. According to the Sandaime, Jiraiya didn't even meet his son until 3 days after the preliminaries of the Chunin exams, and he had come to the village on a monthly basis to give reports to the Sandaime, and not one of those times did he bother to check on his son. Kakashi Hatake, his own student and Naruto's sensei, has shown blatant favoritism for the last Uchiha. He has not taught Naruto anything while he teaches both Sasuke and Sakura. He even set Naruto up with a sensei that could never teach him anything while he went off and trained the Uchiha, when he knew that Naruto needed the most help in terms of training. Iruka Umino, Naruto's sensei in the academy and surprisingly the only one of the academy instructors who even tried to teach Naruto. He had even risked his life to save Naruto when another academy instructor tried to kill him. He definitely had to give props to this guy. Minato looked at the clock. He had asked his wife to bring in Iruka Umino so he could speak with him at noon. It was a few minutes of noon. If he knew his wife, she would either be directly on time or a little bit early. He was about to go back to reading the files on them when he heard knocking at his door. He looked up. Enter. The door opened to reveal his wife with Iruka Umino. "Ah, Kushi-chan, I see you brought in Iruka-san as I asked." Kushina blushed as she nodded. "Yes dear, Iruka-san had no current meetings so he was able to come speak with you as you asked." She smiled towards Iruka as she left to return to the academy. Iruka entered the Hokage office and immediately went into a line of respect. "Yondaime-sama, I am honored that you requested me here and Iruka stopped when Minato began chuckling. "It's all right Iruka, you are one of the few who can get away with being yourself around me, but where are my manners? Just call me Minato, have a seat, there are things I wish to discuss with you." Iruka sat down, shocked that the greatest legend of all time didn't care about formalities. "What did you wish to speak about Minato?" Minato immediately got a slightly forlorn expression on his face. "I wish to speak to you in regards to Naruto Uzumaki, my son." Chapter 3. Phew, this is the longest chapter I have written in a while. I hope those of you who have been begging me to make the chapters longer are happy. I am also thinking of possibly making this story in Harem. If I get enough replies to do so I will. Iruka was shocked beyond belief. His student, Naruto Uzumaki, was the son of the Yondaime. But if Naruto was the son of the Yondaime, then that meant he must be the son of Kushina Uzumaki, and that meant. Iruka got on his knees and clasped his hands together. "Yondaime-sama, I know that at one point I hated him because of the Kyuubi. But I swear on my family name that I no longer see Naruto for." Whoa there Iruka, I never said that you think Naruto is Kyuubi. In fact I never even asked you here to answer any of those questions. Iruka seemed relieved as he stood back up and sat back in the chair. "Then what did you want to speak to me about, Minato?" Minato had a forlorn expression on his face at that point. "I want you to tell me about my son. How was his experience in the academy? Was he a good kid? Did anybody ever look out for him?" Iruka had a thoughtful expression on his face. "Honestly Minato, that is a hard question to answer. But I will see what I can do." Iruka sighed before he started speaking. His experience in the academy, worse than any other kid. On the first day he was sent to the principal's office where he was paddled for speaking out of turn, when all he was doing was answering a question correctly. Iruka cringed as Minato began gripping the side of his desk. The principal was fired for child abuse. The newer principal was a little better, but not by much. He constantly gave Naruto punishments such as cleaning all the blackboards, mopping the hallways, even cleaning the bathrooms, all for the most minor things like bumping into a student, defending himself when other students attacked him, answering questions correctly. Minato was gripping his desk so hard it was beginning to crack. "Anything else Iruka?" Minato was losing what little patience he had at that point. "Well, as far as I can remember, Naruto started the academy 2 years earlier than anyone else. I started teaching him after his 4th year in the academy. By the end of his 1st year I no longer saw him as the Kyuubi." Iruka looked down at that point, but by then the damage had already been done. He longer tried to excel in class, thinking he would get punished. He goofed off to get the most minor amount of attention. No matter how many times kids laughed at him for it, I tried for the 3 years he was in my class to show him that he could excel if he wanted to, that if he applied himself he wouldn't be hurt or punished, but he didn't trust me, or anyone else. He began trusting me near the end of his second failed attempt at the graduation exam, but by then there was no way I could help him improve. He had completely foregone training, he goofed off all the time, it was painful to see that he had fallen so far. Minato stopped gripping the table as a few tears fell from his face. Iruka, was Naruto a good kid? Iruka sighed at that point. Naruto had to be the kindest soul in all of Konoha. He endured teachers beating him in front of the class, the kids' hateful glares that they inherited from their parents' hate, in all of it he smiled. I knew it was fake though, I have never seen a kid so young put up a front so strong. No one knew that he was in pain, and those that did know, well, he refused to take help from any of them. He absolutely hated pushing his problems on others, but all in all, there wasn't a better kid in all of Konoha, at least none that I know of. Minato smiled at that. That's good to know Iruka, so tell me, did anybody look out for him? Iruka was downcast at that point. Minato, in the entire academy I was the only person who looked out for him. But in the entire village there were 3 people who were openly helping him, including me. Minato snarled at that fact. The only 2 people to look out for him were Chuki and Ayame Ichiraku. Besides those 2, the only people who looked out for him were on Sandaime-sama's orders, and even then they did a terrible job. Minato clutched his desk and released it, sighing in annoyance. Thank you Iruka, that will be all. Minato was about to call his secretary. Minato looked towards Iruka. I know I am not the only one who you will be speaking to, so can I ask you why you spoke to me first? Minato smiled at Iruka. I spoke to you first because of the following reasons. 1. You were the easiest to find, and 2. You have shown the most respect towards my son, so I just wanted to thank you. Minato opened a drawer. I want you to keep this. Iruka took what it was Minato was giving to him. It was a tri-pronged kunai. If you ever need my assistance, use that, and depending on what situation it is, I will come to you or you will come to me. Iruka was shocked by this turn of events. Minato, thank you. Minato began to chuckle. Don't worry Iruka, just make sure that you keep teaching those students of yours. Iruka stood up and saluted. Hi, Yondaime-sama. Minato chuckled as Iruka ran through the door. He immediately began to scowl as he waited for his next appointment, his student Kakashi Hatake. He had taught Kakashi that he is never to be favoritist towards any of his students, never to choose one student over the other, and that is precisely what Kakashi had done. And on top of that, Kakashi had the gall to suggest his team for the Chunin exams when he knew that only one of them was ready. He was not happy. Minato was waiting for half an hour when he lost his patience. Anbu. 4 Anbu members immediately shunshined into the room. Bring me Kakashi Hatake, now. The Anbu immediately shunshined out to find the lazy Cyclops. 10 minutes later they reappeared in the office with a struggling Kakashi. Hey guys, seriously. I was going to see Minato-sensei as soon as I finished paying my respects to Obito. The Anbu threw Kakashi to the ground where they shunshined out of the room. Kakashi turned his head to Minato where he did his usual eye smile. Oh hi sensei, how are you? Kakashi brought out his orange book and flipped it to his most recent page. Thwack. Kakashi was shocked as a kunai went right through his book and attached it to the wall. He slowly looked up to see that Minato was extremely pissed. If you ever read that book in front of me again Kakashi, I will personally cut off the very thing that makes you a man, am I clear? Kakashi nodded in fear but kept sending sad glances at his book. Sit down Kakashi, now. Kakashi practically ran to the seat when Minato released a substantial amount of killing intent. I have a few questions that I need answered, and you will answer them, am I clear? Kakashi nodded his head. Now the questions are, who is on your genin team, what skills have you taught them, and why? Any questions after your explanation will be answered regardless of personal preference. Now. Kakashi shivered as Minato slowly dropped the killing intent. My genin team consists of the Rookie of the Year Sasuke Uchiha, last of the Uchiha clan, the Kunoichi of the Year Sakura Haruno, and the dead last Naruto Uzumaki. Kakashi was shivering. Why was his sensei angry with him? Minato nodded. Now, tell me what you have taught the team as a whole, and don't even think about lying to me. Because I went to great measures to set up several lie-detecting seals in this room, now talk Kakashi. Kakashi was sweating at that point, he was so afraid of his sensei. As AT team I taught them teamwork exercises and tree walking. Minato looked at Kakashi with a raised eyebrow. That's it, that's all you taught new genins who had just graduated from the academy, that you sent right into the Chunin exams when there is a severely high chance of them getting killed. Kakashi slowly nodded his head as the killing intent increased. I find that interesting that you did not teach the team properly, when I made it very clear when I was your sensei that favoritism will not be tolerated. Kakashi was confused by Minato's statement. Sensei, the killing intent in the room skyrocketed at that point. You will refer to me as Yondaime-sama until I see fit, Kakashi. Now what was it you were saying? Kakashi took deep breaths before he answered. Yondaime-sama, I have not shown favoritism in my squad, I assure you. Minato glared at Kakashi at that point. Oh really, allow me to read through your training reports on your genin. Minato pulled out a few files, each with the name of separate genin on it. Ah, here we are, Sasuke Uchiha, last of the Uchiha clan. Shall we look to see what lack of favoritism has taught him? I do believe we shall. Minato opened the folder and began skimming through the various documents to find the list of skills taught. Ah, here we are, list of jutsus, Kaden, Ruka no Jutsu, Raiden, Nagashi, and what do we have here, Chidori. A jutsu that we both agreed was a dangerous assassination jutsu, taught to a genin. Kakashi flinched in fear. That only covers ninjutsu. Now how about we look at the genjutsu? Minato looked at the file. Megan, Narukumi no Jutsu, Megan, Kokoni Arizu no Jutsu, and it also seems you have just started teaching him Megan, Kyotenchi 10. Minato glared at Kakashi, scrunching up the folder as he spoke. And last but certainly not least, taijutsu and chakra control. He looked at the paper. For chakra control you have taught him water walking, leaf balancing, and basic kunai balancing. Now taijutsu, I see that you have taught him Goken, the standard Hitaki style of fighting, and some basics in the Uchiha style of taijutsu. Minato set the folder down. Now with the Hitaki style of fighting I can't do anything since as the only remaining member of the Hitaki family, you have absolute say who you teach it to. And the Uchiha style of fighting rightfully belongs to Sasuke. However, the Goken is a dojo style of taijutsu, and from what I can see from your reports, you only acquired this style of fighting through copying the taijutsu style and then teaching it to the Uchiha. Dojo techniques are never, and I mean never, to be taught outside of the dojo. I am surprised that Metagai has not pressed charges for stealing techniques from a dojo and then teaching them to someone who is not part of the dojo. Kakashi was sweating like a pig at this point. Yondaime-sama, you have to understand that Sasuke was fighting against a strong opponent and he needed those techniques just to survive. Minato slammed his fist down into the desk, forcing it to crack. And your other student did not. How can you tell me that Naruto Uzumaki, the dead last of the year, going against last year's rookie of the year, who had no problem trying to kill his own family, could possibly survive that fight without Kyuubi's chakra, with such mediocre skills? Kakashi was shivering in fear. His sensei was making anything Tsunade released as killing intent look like a slap on the wrist. I figured he would be able to use Kyuubi's chakra, besides, there's no way he could have won in the first place. He has no skills as a shinobi whatsoever. The killing intent skyrocketed. No skills as a shinobi! Exclamation mark. I hardly say that someone who has managed to evade Anbu, break into the Hokage vault, steal the Forbidden Scroll, learn an A-ranked Kinjutsu in a couple of hours, and develop unique battle strategies at the last second has no skills as a shinobi. Kakashi. Did you even bother to teach him anything? Oh wait, I will answer that by listing what you have taught him. Minato pulled out a file on Naruto and began flipping through the pages. He finally stopped at his training list. In the 6 months you have been Naruto's sensei you have taught him tree walking, and nothing else. Teamwork exercises that help the Uchiha develop his skills do not count as a training skill. Kakashi. Minato slammed the file on his desk. According to the Sandame's reports you practically demanded he be put on your team along with the Uchiha. Yet in the entire time that you have been his sensei you have taught him absolutely nothing. Every skill he has in his arsenal is self-taught. So why, if you were never planning to train him in the first place, did you demand he be placed on your team when there were several other Junin who could teach him, willingly, thus stunting his growth as a shinobi? Answer me, Kakashi. Kakashi was holding his bladder. He was induced with so much killing intent. Yondaime-sama, I demanded Naruto on my team because there was a general rivalry between Naruto and Sasuke. I felt it would help Sasuke improve and grow. Yondaime-sama, you must understand that I was doing what I did in Obito's memory. I needed Naruto to be a rival to Sasuke without completely rivaling him. It was the only way to guarantee Sasuke remains loyal to the village. The air grew so cold that Kakashi could have sworn he saw his breath. So let me get this straight, you made it so that Naruto could never excel as a shinobi, also you could train the Uchiha, all in Obito's memory. Kakashi nodded. Minato took a deep breath. You will no longer be training Team 7 Kakashi, take your precious Uchiha and train him to your heart's content, but I refuse to allow you to stunt my son's growth. What? Kakashi was shocked, the person whose growth he had been stunting was, oh god, what have I done? Minato-sensei, you have lost the right to call me Sensei Kakashi, you have taken all that I have taught you and thrown it out the window. You say you are honoring Obito's memory, from what I have seen you are disgracing it, I am ashamed to call you my student. Kakashi fell to his knees and began pleading. Yondaime-sama, please, I beg you, please give me a chance to redeem myself, if I had known Naruto was your son I would have, slap, Kakashi grasped his cheek when Minato backhanded him. He looked into his sensei's rage-filled eyes. You would have what, played favorites with him? Has Konoha fallen so far that they will only honor someone with noble blood? I am truly disgusted. Minato returned to his desk. Get out of my sight. Kakashi let his head fall as he began to tear up, realizing his mistake. He turned and began walking towards the door. One more thing, Kakashi. Kakashi stopped in his tracks, not bothering to turn around. If you are late for tomorrow's meeting, or any meeting after by even a minute, I will rip out your Sharingan eye and destroy it right before your eyes, Obito's memory be damned. Kakashi nodded his head and walked out of the office where he shunshined off, breaking into tears as he got home. Minato was trying to calm down, knowing the next person he was going to meet was going to piss him off the most. He finally calmed down as he heard knocking at the door. Enter, the one who entered was a very pissed off secretary. Jiraiya-sama is here. Yondaime-sama, Jiraiya must have been making rude comments towards her concerning her figure. Send him in. Minato's tone left no room for discussion. The secretary moved out of the way as Jiraiya came waltzing in with an annoyed scowl on his face. Hey, Minato. How is it going? Minato glared at Jiraiya. Look, can we hurry this meeting up? I have to get back to my research. Minato chuckled. Yes, of course, as it seems that your research is far more important than your duties to your godson. Jiraiya got a serious expression on his face as he began to explain. Now Minato, I know I haven't been the best godfather, but, shut up Jiraiya and sit down. I don't want to hear your explanation unless you have something that will deny the facts that I have here, and don't even think about lying to me. Jiraiya sighed as he sat down. Now, we will start off with this report right here. Minato held up a folder that concerned Tsunade. I was wondering where Tsunade was, until I reads this. Minato opened the folder and began reading. I find it interesting that the Sandaime knew the corpse clone jutsu when you were the only one with that skill. And I know for a fact that the corpse clone jutsu is a skill that is only taught in your family, and you only learned it fully a week before the Kyuubi attack. Also, the Sandaime was always busy, so there was no way that you could have taught him it. Care to explain then how Sarutobi managed to present a corpse clone in the likeness of my son to Tsunade? Well. Jiraiya began to shiver a bit. He was in deep shit right now and he knew it. Sigh, I made the corpse clone Minato. It was well known throughout Konoha that she was the godmother to your child and it would have set off rumors. We had to make sure that no one found out it was your son. The killing intent rose exponentially. Why was it necessary to do what you did? I do not care that people would have found out Naruto was my child, he would have been protected from any and all enemies. So tell me Jiraiya, why it was necessary to tell Tsunade that the only reason she returned to Konoha was dead. Jiraiya swallowed, knowing he couldn't come up with a legitimate answer. Minato, I know you are angry but, the killing intent was worse than anything Tsunade had ever done. Jiraiya, do I look angry? Jiraiya nodded his head, while Minato folded his hands in front of his face. I was angry when you peeped on my wife. I was angry when you based our honeymoon in one of your books. I was angry that for my wife's birthday shower you gave her a spaghetti string bikini that barely covered her unmentionables. Now I'm furious. Jiraiya jumped from his seat when Minato slammed his fist into the desk. You sent one of the best medics away from Konoha by telling her the only reason she came back was dead. You even went so far as to present a corpse to her by using that damn corpse clone jutsu. Corpse clone jutsu provided by 1v2. Jiraiya was about to speak, and on top of that, not only do you send away his godmother, but you also never bothered to check in on my son to see if he was okay, you never bothered to raise him like I asked. I read through Sarutobi's reports, so I know that you came to the village at least once a month to deliver your spy network reports. Even when Sarutobi suggested you check up on him, you said, "Sorry, I have to get back to my research." You forewent your duties as his godfather, also you could check out a woman's chest. Jiraiya stood up. Damn it, Minato, I know I messed up, but the ice-cold glare Minato was giving him was worse than the malicious eyes of the Kyuubi. Sit down, now. Jiraiya swallowed the lump in his throat and slowly sat down. I asked you one simple thing, Jiraiya, one little thing. And that one little thing was that you watch out for my son and keep him safe. And you can't even do that, right? Jiraiya wanted to protest but knew he was beat. He was going to make sure he made up for his stupid mistakes. Minato, I understand that what I did was wrong, but Minato cut him off again. And don't think I haven't heard how you trained my son for the Chunin exams. Tell me, Jiraiya, since when is throwing a 12-year-old who has had no formal training in chakra control off a cliff so he can summon a massive toad using a type of chakra that he has never had training in using a smart idea? Jiraiya began to sweat but thought he had an answer. Minato, I felt it was the only way to get him to properly use summoning. Minato used the hand that was gripping the desk to rip a portion of the desk out. Did you bother to teach him anything while he was learning to summon, or did you just show him the process and hand signs and go to look at girls while he begged you for help? Jiraiya looked down, knowing he was beat. At this point, Jiraiya, I realize what a mistake I made. Minato went back to looking through the various reports. You will not be allowed anywhere near my son so long as I feel you are inept, and I doubt you will ever change my mind. Jiraiya had a look of shocked horror on his face. Minato, please, he is mine godson. Crash! In the span of 2 seconds, Jiraiya was pinned against the wall struggling for breath with a kunai laced just above his sternum. You lost all rights to being Naruto's godfather 12 years ago. I have made my decision and you will follow it. Or so help me Kami, I will take away everything that makes you a man. Minato shoved Jiraiya into the wall as he walked back to his desk. You have 24 hours to prepare yourself for a mission to retrieve Tsunade. You will tell her the whole truth, her wrath be damned. Jiraiya was taking deep breaths as Minato gave him a task he was terrified to do. Are you kidding? Tsunade will kill me. Thwack! Jiraiya slowly looked down as he saw Minato throw the kunai in between his legs. Luckily the kunai only caught his clothes. You had better hope she kills you, because if you do not take this mission I will make you suffer for all of your transgressions. My patience with this village is reaching its limit, and fast. Now get out of my sight, Jiraiya. Jiraiya nodded his head and left the room, terrified of the repercussions if he didn't. Once Jiraiya left the room, Minato lost it. AAA ag. He charged up 2 Rasengans and smashed the library in the office to bits. He then proceeded to release a chakra pulse that shattered the windows. He grabbed the desk that was already damaged beyond repair and threw it out the window, barely missing a few coming Chunin. After Minato released his pent-up rage, he broke down and began to cry. He was so ashamed of his village. They had ignored his last wish, they had abused his son, and because of it he didn't even believe they were his parents. He would fix that. Minato stood up with puffy eyes that held massive determination. It's time this village learned who they have been abusing. Minato went to his office door and kicked it open, not caring that his secretary was staring at him in terror. Next day, Junin meeting. Minato was staring at the 3 rookie Junin, Kurenai Yuhi, Asuma Sarutobi, and Kakashi Hatake. He had also called in several other Junin to assist, Anko Mitarashi, Shiranui Genma, and an Anbu by the name of Tenzo. There were also many lesser Junin along with Maida Guy, who was looking at Kakashi with disappointment. Minato was sifting through various logs about the Junin, including the ones who had personally asked to train his son. The first was Anko Mitarashi, 18 years old, single, specializing in torture, interrogation, assassination and assault. Lived a life almost as bad as Naruto's but was spared most of the wrath with her terrifying skills. Reasons for requesting Naruto is her student, doesn't want potential to be wasted, and he is kinda cute. The next was Kurenai Yuhi, 23 years old, single, specializing in genjutsu. Lived a fairly sheltered life until parents' death at 8, she became devoted to the kunoichi system and hates fangirls. Reasons for requesting Naruto, can't stand to see her favorite Hyuga's crush be held back by hateful Junin. Asuma Sarutobi, 24 years old, single, specializes in close combat and wind-based jutsu. Heir to the Sarutobi clan but has since forsaken that right. Reasons for requesting to train Naruto, make up for my father's mistakes. All in all, he was impressed with the 3 that requested his son. He had reviewed them and had decided that things needed to be changed. He looked up at the Junin. I have called you all here today to present to you the new team assignments. Not all teams will be changed, as I see that a few are quite efficient, but most are not in the best of condition. The only team I have seen that is comprised of genin that works is run by Maida Guy. Said Junin blushed under the praise. Ah, Yondaime-sama, you flatter me with your youthful praise. Minato chuckled, he always liked Guy, always full of energy. He often hoped that Guy would rub off on Kakashi. Anyways, I feel that the following teams are imbalanced and must be improved. I will also set up several programs that will help in their underlying skills. Minato pulled out a folder that read Team 7. Kakashi noticeably looked ashamed at this. Starting with Team 7, the team will be disbanded and Kakashi will completely apprentice the Uchiha, since he seems incapable of showing anything but favoritism. Most of the Junin glared at Kakashi. I will also be applying the following programs. Minato pulled out a folder. Anko Mitarashi will be in charge of improving the various kunoichi. The only kunoichi from this year's graduating class that shows even remote promise is Hinata Hyuga, even then she needs some assistance in her skills. Anko will run all graduating kunoichi through a 2-week training session where they are to work out the kinks in their skills. Anko was grinning at the prospect. The genin teams will now be rearranged as follows. Minato pulled up a sheet. Under Asuma Sarutobi, Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, and Shino Aburame. Under Tenzo, Kiba Inuzuka, Ino Yamanaka, and Sakura Haruno. And under Kurenai Yuhi, Hinata Hyuga, and Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. What? A Junin yelled, how can the demon brat carry the honorable name of the Namikaze? Kakashi began shaking in fear as Minato turned his gaze towards the stupid Junin. He carries the name Namikaze because he is my son, do you have a problem with that? The Junin clearly didn't know when to shut up. Hell yeah, I have a problem with it. I refuse to believe that the demon is your Skjelch. The Junin was shut up by a kunai that was thrown with such force that it went right through the Junin's head. Everyone turned their heads to see that the one who threw the kunai was an extremely pissed off Kushina. She pulled out 3 kunai in between each finger and brought them up to her face. Anyone else wished to insult my son? Everyone shook their heads as Kushina immediately broke out in a grin. Good. She put away her kunais and sauntered up to her husband and sat on his desk. Minato chuckled at his wife as he called in the Anbu to remove the body. They complied, reluctantly of course. Minato was about to continue talking when Shiranui Genma spoke. Yondaime-sama, does Naruto know you are his father? Kushina and Minato were downcast at that. Genma was confused until Minato spoke. We told him we were his parents, but he doesn't believe us. Years of this village's hate, scorn, and torment have worn away any and all hopes of ever having a loving family. Genma looked down at that, knowing that Naruto's life was terrible. I will be announcing to the whole village tomorrow that Naruto is my son. The reasons for this is because I want my son to be at the announcement and he should be out of the hospital tomorrow. Kurenai asked a question that was on her mind. Why is Naruto in the hospital, if I may ask, Yondaime-sama? Minato began grinding his nails against the desk. In my son's case, a minor case of a shattered femur that will finish healing by tomorrow. Everyone was shocked that a shattered femur was considered minor injury for Naruto. That is all, you are all dismissed. Everyone but Kurenai shunshined out of the office, having more questions for the Yondaime. Yondaime-sama, why did you place your son with me? Surely Kakashi would have been better suited to train him. Minato scoffed at the mention of Kakashi. My former student has been my son's sensei for the past 6 months, and in that time he has only taught him tree walking. No Kurenai, I chose you because unlike other senseis you will not show favoritism. I also think that you can bring out the best in my son. Kurenai smiled at the praise but immediately sunshined off. Minato went back to work while Kushina began her trek back to the academy, while a certain Hyuga was going to visit Konoha's resident blonde. Chapter 4. Okay, I know you all are going to be pissed at me, but this chapter does not show Naruto believing that Minato and Kushina are his parents. How I have him accept them as his parents will be revealed soon enough. Also, if any of you have suggestions I would greatly appreciate them. I have a severe writer's block and it is not getting better. Hinata Hyuga was just entering the hospital. She had come a few hours before with her father to try and speak with Naruto. Flashback. Hinata and her father were walking towards the hospital, both for the exact same reason, one Naruto Uzumaki. Hiyashi wanted to thank the blonde for knocking some sense into Neji and giving him his nephew back. Hinata wanted to make sure that Naruto was okay. Once the Hyuga clan found out about Naruto's injury, most of them actually showed concern. Except for the elders, they honestly didn't care either way, but they did show gratitude towards Naruto. Not only for getting Neji out of his slump, but for giving Hinata a backbone. Hiyashi and Hinata had arrived at the hospital to find that the usual person at the front desk was not there. Hiyashi scoffed at the memory of the woman. He always hated that woman for doing what she did to the young blonde. He walked up to the desk with a calm demeanor and spoke, "I wish to know the room number of Naruto Uzumaki." The woman at the desk looked up and gave her reply. Yondaime-sama has ordered that no one enter his room. You will need the Hokage's signature to meet with him, do you have it? Hiyashi shook his head, then I cannot give you the room number. The woman went back to reading the documents as Hiyashi tried to reason with the woman. Please, I need to speak with him, it is urgent. The woman looked at Hiyashi. Get the Hokage's signature, but I would wait a few days. He currently isn't in the best of moods. She went back to her paperwork as Hiyashi turned around to head to the Hokage Tower, hoping his resurrected friend was in a good mood. Hiyashi did not notice his daughter run behind a tree where she was plotting a break-in. End flashback. Hinata had left her father as he went to the Hokage Tower. She had made a plan very quickly to see her Naruto-kun. Now all she had to do was start. Hinata walked into the lobby with a baked good. There was a note on the food that said, "To the doctors of the Konoha Hospital." She walked up to the desk. "Anyo, excuse me." The receptionist turned her head towards Hinata. "I brought a baked good for the staff." The woman behind the desk smiled. "Oh, how thoughtful, may I?" Hinata nodded as the woman reached for a bit of the food. She took a single bite and smiled. She then began to sway as she fell to the ground. Hinata looked at her in pity as she turned the note on the food around. "Do not eat." She then ran behind the desk and looked through the various names until she found Naruto's. He was in room 213 on the west wing. She smiled as she ran to the room. She went through the entire west wing until she found the door she was looking for. She carefully activated her Byakugan and looked around to make sure there were no guards. She noticed that there were 2 guards stationed on the ledge above Naruto's window, sleeping. Hinata sighed at the Anbu members' clear lack of motivation to actually do their job, not that she would say this out loud. She carefully opened the door to Naruto's room and walked in. She was blushing furiously when she realized that her Byakugan was still active and she was seeing through his clothes. Hinata had to contain herself, but man was it difficult. The only reason that in the last few months of being a kunoichi that she hasn't jumped Naruto was the fact that she would faint every time she got perverted images of him in her head. She walked up to Naruto's bed as she slowly turned off her Byakugan, taking in his natural features. She stared at the blonde's face as he slept and let a smile grace her features. "Naruto-kun, if only I could tell you what I feel." She ran a single finger across his whisker marks. She snapped her hand back when he stirred in his sleep. His whisker marks must be sensitive. She ran a finger across his whisker marks and got a purr from him. She giggled as she kept staring at Naruto. Having fun there. Hinata eeped and snapped her head around as she saw the 2 Anbu from before. "Did you honestly think that the 2 of us were asleep?" Hinata lowered her head in shame as the other Anbu chuckled. "Normally we would be taking you in for violating orders set by the Hokage himself. But since you don't seem to want to hurt the Gaki in any way, we will let this slide. Now get out." Hinata eeped again and ran for the door as the other Anbu looked at the blonde. "Man, that girl has it for him bad." The other Anbu sighed in resignation. Yeah, she had better fess up her feelings before some other girl claims him. They both nodded in agreement as they went back to their posts. The next day, Naruto had finally gotten out of the hospital and was heading for the town square. He was extremely uncomfortable with all the civilians giving him hateful glares. The Yondaime had called them all to the front of the Hokage Tower to make an announcement. Naruto snorted at this. He probably wanted to openly declare his status as a Jinchuriki. Not that he really cared anymore, so long as he got strong enough to become Hokage and gain some acknowledgement he did not care. Sure, it meant that all of his so-called friends would abandon him, but oh well, it's not like he expected to ever find friendship anyways. Naruto sighed in exhaustion as he waited for the Yondaime's announcement, unaware of the sets of eyes watching him. The Hyuga, Hiyashi and the elders were looking at the blonde, discussing their opinions of him. Sure, they disliked the boy for that time he dyed all their underwear pink, or that time he filled their pillows with special explosive notes that made them explode, or that time when he snuck into the compound and dressed up the most serious of the Hyuga elders in a clown suit that he could not remove. But not one of them saw Naruto as the Kyuubi. They could easily tell he was not affected by the demon thanks to their Byakugan, so they were discussing how they could repay the blonde who they were viewing as the most powerful shinobi in the years to come. Hiyashi-sama, I believe we should set our plan in motion soon. While he may be a no-name orphan, he is still quite a powerful shinobi. Hiyashi was looking at the blonde and thought. Yes, and on top of that he has managed to do the two things we have been trying to do for years, get Neji out of his mightier-than-thou routine and break our heiress from her shell. Hiyashi kept looking at the blonde, wondering why the usually upbeat child was in such a short mood. He was not as energetic as he usually was. We will discuss this after the Yondaime's announcement, agreed. The elders nodded their heads and looked back to the Hokage Tower for the coming announcement. Kakashi was looking at the blonde, hoping that at some point he could get close enough to apologize to him for being such a terrible sensei. He had gathered up as many jutsu as he could find, hoping he could convince Sensei, the Yondaime, to allow him to be his son's sensei again. Kakashi turned his head back to the Hokage Tower, trying to hold in his tears at failing his team, again. With Sasuke. Sasuke was gritting his teeth at the blonde, wondering how he could possibly have been surpassed by the blonde. That dope's power should be mine, oh well. I just have to be patient, then I will go to the Yondaime and demand he train me, then I can kill him. Sasuke turned his head to the tower, smirking at his plan. In the Hokage's office, Minato and Kushina were looking through the crystal ball at Naruto. They hoped that their plan would make their son realize that he truly is their son. How they wished they could make up for the pain he was forced to endure, how they wished that he would believe them. Minato looked at the clock. It's time. Kushina looked and nodded her head as she walked towards the door. The two used Minato's Hiraishin to get to the top of the Hokage Tower. General Pav, the villagers, shinobi, and various merchants were at the front of the Hokage Tower as they saw the flash of light that indicated that the Yondaime had arrived. The entire crowd cheered for the Yondaime's arrival, many of them thinking he would have the demon executed. The shinobi cheered at the Yondaime's arrival as he walked up to the stand with the Red Death in tow. Minato glared at the populace. They meet me with love, yet my son is met with scorn. Kushina glared at the populace, but her eyes softened when she saw her son. He was looking at them, as if he did not really care. She sighed, hoping this would work. Minato stepped up to the podium and spoke, "People of Konoha. As you can see, I have returned from the dead. When Orochimaru invaded the village, he brought me and my wife back from the dead with a forbidden jutsu. Most would be pleased to be brought back to life, while I am pleased to be alive again. It is for reasons that are far different from what you would think." The populace was confused. What was the Yondaime talking about? Minato spoke up before anyone could speak, but to understand this I will have to go back to when I did 12 years ago. The village of Konoha was attacked by the most powerful of the Biju, the Kyuubi no Kitsune. You were told that the demon was killed. But even I, the greatest seal master, could not kill the demon, so I did the next best thing. I sealed the nine-tailed fox away in the body of a newborn that has lived amongst you since then. Naruto began nervously looking around as shinobi were looking at him in contempt. Civilians were pulling out knives. Naruto sighed. So that's why he set up this announcement. He wants the pleasure of seeing me get killed. Oh well, not like the bastards haven't tried to kill me before. Naruto watched as the populace began to edge closer to him. But after what I have seen, I should have just let this damn village burn. The crowd was shocked at this statement. What was the Yondaime talking about? A civilian managed to shout loud enough for the Yondaime to hear. What are you talking about, Yondaime-sama? What have we done to deserve such a fate? The civilian was shut up by a dosage of killing intent from the Yondaime, who spoke with clear aggression. You deserve such a fate for how you treated my legacy, that's why. The civilians were confused, the shinobi were curious, but the ones who knew what the Yondaime meant were looking down in shame. What legacy? How have we treated you legacy to make you think we deserve death? In fact, why do you not tell us who your legacy is so we may properly honor him, then we can kill the demon that took your life. That was the last straw. Minato and Kushina released as much killing intent as they could. You disgust me. What the hell was I thinking when I took the title of Hokage? Do you all mean to tell me that none of you noticed that my son was right in front of all of you, and throughout all these years you have abused him? How can you all be so blind? The civilians were confused as hell, but the shinobi were slowly putting it together when they saw Naruto's reaction. Minato released as much killing intent as he could and pointed to Naruto. My legacy, and the one you abused, and the person that I used to save all of your wretched lives was my son, Naruto Uzumaki. The civilians were shocked as well as the shinobi. They all looked at Naruto, but they were all shocked at what he did. For the love of Kami, if you want to hurt me so bad, get your damn shinobi to torture me. Seriously, is it even necessary for you to go to this length to try and hurt me? The civilians were shocked at this. I know you hate me since I hold the demon that killed you and your wife. But seriously man, don't you think you are going a bit overboard? Minato and Kushina used Hiraishin to get to him. Naruto was shocked and spoke, okay, seriously, I may not have paid that much attention to most of Iruka's lectures, but I do know you need one of those damn kunai to warp with that technique. How the hell did you get here when there is no kunai? Minato pointed to Naruto's collar. Naruto grabbed his collar and looked inside. There was an intricate seal. I had that placed there so I could come to your aid in an instant, my son. Minato would have said something else, but his son grabbed the jacket and threw it to the ground. My son, what are you doing? Naruto shot him an annoyed glare. Would you stop it with the, I am your father routine? I may have fallen for that trick the first 3 times, but I ain't falling for this one. Minato was shocked that someone had tried to pose as his parents before. I stopped falling for those damn routines after the 3rd one when the person who was my mother slipped a lethal poison in my dinner and threw me into Aang River. Minato got on his knees and began crying as he grasped onto his son's shoulders. My son, please, I am telling the truth, I am your real father. He turned his head to Kushina, who was crying her eyes out. She is your mother, we are your parents, damn it Naruto, please believe us. Naruto let his head fall and then snapped it up, rage evident in his eyes. He pushed the Yondaime off of him as he yelled. For the love of shit, just cut it with the charade. If I was your damn son, I wouldn't have been beaten near death every birthday I had. My damn instructors wouldn't rig my damn tests, and I certainly wouldn't have been used to hold the damn demon. What father could do that to their own son? All I am is an orphan brat that had his parents killed at some point that you decided to use for the ceiling, so stop it with the damn charade. Naruto turned around and began walking off. He didn't get 5 feet before he was turned around and forced to face Kushina. My baby, please, I beg you, my baby, please believe us. You really are our child, please Naruto. Naruto grabbed her hand and shoved her off. Can't you two take a hint? I am not falling for it. Naruto used his chakra and jumped onto a nearby roof and ran for his apartment, ignoring all of the civilians' pleas, ignoring the excited whisperings, ignoring his parents' sobs of anguish. Time skip. Naruto was sitting in his apartment, annoyed beyond comprehension. No one in the damn village had left him alone. Ever since the damn Yondaime announced he was his son, he has been dealing with people begging for forgiveness, fangirls, and even the annoying Junin offering training. Did the Yondaime honestly think he was that gullible? He was about to make another cup of ramen, which he had to get a Yame to drop off since he couldn't leave his house without having to deal with those annoying, when someone began knocking on the door. Okay, that's it. Naruto stomped to the door and slammed it open, not even bothering to look who it was. For the lasting time, leave me alone. I am not the Yondaime's kid. No, I won't accept your apology. No, I won't go out with you, and no, I don't want you to train me. Just leave me the alone. And with that Naruto slammed the door right in the face of 3 very shocked individuals. Outside the door, 3 people had come to see Naruto. They had tried to talk to him for the past week, but with all the civilians, shinobi, and fangirls trying to have a go at him, it was just impossible. Kurenai Yuhi had tried to talk to Naruto to explain the new team rosters. She had asked to be Naruto's sensei when he was first offered up. But thanks to Kakashi, she was stuck with an Inuzuka and an Aburame. She knew Kakashi only wanted to use Naruto to his own ends. Admittedly, she also wanted to use him to her own ends, but she had every intention of training him. When the Yondaime had declared her as Naruto's new sensei, she was overjoyed, but with all the annoying civilians and Junin, she never got the chance, and now because of how exhausted her student was, he didn't even want to talk to them. Kurenai looked down as a single tear fell from her eye. Tsunade had just arrived in Konoha the day before. As soon as Jiraiya told her what happened over 12 years ago, she beat him into such a brutal pulp that he would not be doing any shinobi services for months to come. Once she found out where her godson lived, she went to the Sandame's house and punched him so hard in the face that he will never get his damn nose fixed. She came to her godson's house in hopes of doing the job Kushina asked her to do years ago, but she was met with a pissed-off blonde and a door in the face. Tsunade had let a few tears fall as she slumped her shoulders in shame. Hinata had been told by her father that he wholeheartedly approved of her dating Naruto. She was so happy that she squealed a fangirl squeal that would have put the entire Sasuke fan club to shame. She ran around the entire Hyuga compound for hours. She was so happy, making most of the branch and main family wonder her sanity. She went straight to Naruto's apartment but was being blocked by the numerous fangirls. When she finally managed to get to the door, she was ready to confess all her feelings of love, all of her hidden fantasies, all of the things she wanted to say to Naruto, but before she could even say anything, she was shouted at by the very boy she loved. Hinata broke into a myriad of sobs as Tsunade and Kurenai tried to comfort the weeping heiress. Naruto sat back in his apartment and went back to eating. He heard the crying on the other side of the door. The first time he heard it from one of the fan girls, he went to help her, but the damn girl almost raped him. So this time he ignored it, not caring that he just broke a girl's heart, not caring that he caused 3 women pain. A week later, Kurenai had finally told Naruto about the new team arrangements. He seemed a little irked that his old team was dissolved, not that he could really call it a team. He was to meet up with his new team at Training Ground 12 at noon. Naruto had not bothered to go to any shops and had decided to get up early to avoid the damn civilians. He had slept in a tree near Training Ground 12 up until noon finally came. He saw Hinata coming into the clearing and jumped down from the trees. "Hey Hinata," said Eris, flinched when she heard Naruto's voice. Hello, Naruto-kun." Hinata had become even more withdrawn since Naruto yelled at her. True, he didn't know it was them. He was just mentally exhausted from all the fangirls, but it still hurt. She saw so many more fangirls get rejected by Naruto time and time again. She was afraid that thanks to the Yondaime publicly declaring he was his son, that he had forced Naruto into a permanent shell, never allowing himself to get close to another. Hinata gritted her teeth in anger. It was all the villagers' fault. If they had just done as the Yondaime asked and treat his son like a hero, treated him like a human being. Hinata often cried herself to sleep. She had refused to leave her room unless it was team meetings, food, or a bathroom. She spent the rest of her time looking at a picture of Naruto as she sobbed herself to sleep. Naruto noticed a single tear fall down her eye. He quickly pulled out a handkerchief and wiped it up. Hinata was stunned by such a bold move from the blonde. Naruto gave Hinata a genuine smile. "I hate to see a girl cry." Hinata blushed as Naruto walked over to a tree. She smiled for the first time in a week. Maybe Naruto hasn't completely cut himself off from the world. Kurenai sat in a tree with the last member of their team. "Well Yakumo, how do you think things will turn out?" Yakumo Kurama stared at her teacher and looked at the blonde. "I don't know, but she better say what she feels soon, or there won't be any chance for her at all." Kurenai nodded at her old apprentice. She hated herself for not being able to help her before, but she was going to take the 3 failures of Konoha and train them to surpass every shinobi before them. They would surpass the Densetsu no Sannin, and this set of Sannin would not fail. Chapter 5. Hiyashi Hyuga was looking through his documents. He had been trying to find that form that Minato had given him over 12 years ago. He needed to convince Naruto that the Yondaime was telling the truth, and the fact that Naruto truly believed that he was just a bastard orphan that the Yondaime used for the sealing did not help. Hiyashi clenched his fist. This was all Sarutobi's fault. Thanks to him Naruto may never be able to open up to anyone again, but if he could just find that stupid document then he could prove to Naruto that he was in fact the Yondaime's son. The Hyuga elders were helping out too. They had gone through every detailed file they could find, but the files were usually filed by the branch family, and the branch family had a tendency to screw up the documents just to get on the elders' nerves. Hiyashi was losing his patience. "URG, where the hell are those documents? We have been looking for them for the past 3 weeks, if we don't find them then our plans are down the toilet." Hiyashi sat down at his desk, wondering where the documents could possibly be. If he did not find those documents soon then he might lose his chance. Hiyashi looked at the picture of his wife, hanging on the wall. "If only you were her my dear Hikari, then perhaps we might be able to do what we actually intended, so many years ago." Meanwhile, with Sasuke. Sasuke was trying to read his scrolls while Kakashi was off to the side moping. Ever since the announcement that Naruto was the Yondaime's son he has grown extremely irritated. Junin stopped coming to him and instead went to Naruto to try and train him. He had lost a majority of his fangirls, the only ones still remaining at his side were Sakura and Ino, but Ino was slowly slipping away from his grasp. Kakashi no longer showed up late, but he always sat to the side moping. He constantly sat curled up in a ball, and he would occasionally hear a choked sob come from the Junin, and the entire time he was clutching a scroll. He had asked Kakashi what was in the scroll and all he said was, "It doesn't concern you," and now he was trying to learn one of the Uchiha family's prized fire jutsu. It was extremely complicated. Up to the point that it would take someone with a fully developed Sharingan to read the specialized kanji. He clutched the scroll in anger. He was not going to learn anything with an inept sensei standing on the sidelines. In the Yondaime's office, Minato was extremely frustrated. Ever since the announcement that Naruto was his son he has been getting Junin after Junin trying to train the blonde to get in his good graces. So far it had only succeeded in pissing him off further. On top of that, the new treaty from Suna was here, and the terms were definitely not what he was hoping for. The newest team Kurenai had been doing D through B rank missions so far. Each time the mission report came Naruto would wait outside until Kurenai came out. "Damn you Sarutobi, thanks to you I have lost my son, and I may never get him back, damn it." Minato had been trying for 3 weeks to figure out some way for his son to accept him, but so far the task had proven fruitless. Minato was reading through the treaty, and sighed that this would only make things worse. "I need some aspirin." He pressed a button and spoke into the intercom. "Suzumi," the intercom clicked for a minute. "Yes Yondaime-sama. Have someone go retrieve my son." "Of course Yondaime-sama." He let go of the intercom button and read over the treaty again. "Please forgive me my son." At Konoha's gates, the Suna entourage was heading through the gates towards the Hokage Tower to finalize the treaty agreement. The entourage included Gaara, Kankuro, Temari, and a small group of Suna shinobi guards. Temari was smiling a huge smile that screamed, "This is the best day of my life." Gaara and Kankuro were extremely frightened by this new persona of their Nei-chan. Kankuro whispered to Gaara, "Is Nei-chan alright?" Gaara was staying far from Temari. "Honestly, I have no clue." Temari was extremely happy. She had convinced the council this was the best course of action, and who was better for the position. "I hope that he accepts." With Naruto, Kurenai had gone through a lot of effort to try and get Naruto to open up, but because of what has happened in the last 3 weeks he was very recluse. He didn't even leave his house anymore, saying that he does not want to deal with the ignorant villagers. She wanted to go right to the former Sandaime and kick him right where it hurts. Thanks to him Naruto no longer had the hope of gaining a family. He no longer trusted anyone, all because Sarutobi broke several promises to Naruto's parents. Naruto was reading a scroll on a form of old taijutsu from the Land of Blades. He was having extreme difficulty since he barely knew how to read. The Sandaime knew this and had never bothered to rectify this problem. So far Naruto had only barely gotten past the first paragraph. Kurenai decided to help Naruto out. She walked over and got to eye level with the blonde. "Hey Naruto, how about I help you out?" Naruto glanced up at Kurenai before he quickly returned his eyes to the scroll. No thanks, why don't you go train Hinata and Yakumo? They are clan heirs, and are clearly more important than the bastard Kyuubi child. Kurenai cringed at his tone. After the announcement he had come up with this twisted realization that only those with noble blood would ever be considered worth training, and since Naruto truly believed he was just some bastard orphan, thanks to the Sandaime, he decided that he was no longer going to waste his time asking for his sensei's help. He even went so far as to coldly say he wasn't worth it. Look, Naruto glanced at Kurenai with a cold look. Listen Kurenai, I don't want to hear it all right. I am not the Yondaime's son, and no doubt the Yondaime put you up to this so later on he can order you to kill me. Kurenai snapped at Naruto as she released a small amount of killing intent. Listen here Naruto, your father would never order someone to kill his own son. Naruto snapped up to glare right in Kurenai's face. For the lasting time I am not his son, go train the other two, I'm better off on my own anyway. Naruto grabbed his scrolls and began walking off, when an Anbu shunshined in front of him. Naruto Uzumaki, your father. The Anbu was blasted by a dose of killing intent. He is not my father. The killing intent dropped as the Anbu recovered from the sudden killing intent and continued. The Yondaime wishes to speak to you Naruto. Naruto sighed as he began walking towards the Hokage tower. The Anbu turned to Kurenai. He really doesn't need the shit he is dealing with, I really hope he opens up soon. Kurenai looked down as she spoke. I hope so too Tenzo, I really do. Tenzo shunshined off as Kurenai turned towards the last two students in the field. Okay, let's get back to training. Time skip, Hokage office. Minato was awaiting the arrival of the Suna entourage, as well as the arrival of his son. Kushina had arrived back from her mission a few minutes ago, and she was not happy with the treaty at all. What the hell Minato, we want Naruto to accept us as his parents, not hate us, what were you thinking? Minato cringed as he listened to his wife. He knew Naruto was going to hate him for this, but they needed to get his treaty finalized. Kushina, believe me I do not like this either, but we have to finalize this treaty to prevent an all-out war. Kushina scoffed at this. Why do we even bother staying in Konoha? This village deserves to be burned to the ground for what it has done to our son. Minato looked at Kushina with a stern and remorseful look. And how do you think that will work? From what we have seen Naruto desires only one thing in life, to one day lead this village. I want to leave this village Kushina, believe me I do, but I can't do that when Naruto still holds feelings for this place, I can't do that to him. Kushina looked down as she realized why taking Naruto from Konoha would be a bad idea, especially with how he sees them. The two looked at the door as someone began knocking on it. Enter, the door opened to reveal his secretary. Yondaime-sama, the Suna contingent has arrived. Minato nodded his head. Send them in, the secretary signaled for the Suna group to enter. The first to enter was Temari, followed by Kankuro, and Gaara. Temari smiled at the Yondaime. Greetings Yondaime-sama, when shall we begin the finalization of the treaty? Minato was about to answer when the door was slammed open. They all turned their heads with varying reactions. Minato and Kushina were nervously sporting smiles, Kankuro was shocked, Gaara was smiling, and Temari was, glomping the person who came through the door. Naruto had been glomped by Temari and his head was in between hers. Naruto had the decency to sport a blush, but he quickly shook it off. Get off me, please. Temari reluctantly. Naruto walked up to the Yondaime's desk. You summoned me Yondaime-sama. Naruto looked at Minato expectantly. Naruto, as you are probably aware the invasion caused severe damage to Suna's forces, so we have finalized a recent treaty between our two villages. Naruto quirked an eyebrow, not getting what the Yondaime was talking about. What are you getting at? Minato sighed as Kushina stepped forward. Naruto, the Suna Council, along with Temari no Sabaku, believe that the best way to permanently secure our treaty is to have an arranged marriage between two of our shinobi. So why isn't the Uchiha here? Everyone looked at Naruto as if he had grown a second head. Obviously Suna will want their shinobi to marry someone of high standing, and I have not had any contact with Sasuke for the last 2 weeks, so I will not be of much help giving him the message that you want him to marry a Suna woman. Everyone began to nervously look around, but Minato and Kushina spoke up. Naruto, it's not Sasuke that will be a part of the arranged marriage, it's you. Excuse me, Naruto spoke with a calm demeanor, but there was clear aggression in his voice. Would the Suna shinobi leave for a few minutes, now? The Suna team walked out of the office. When the door closed, Naruto exploded, "What?" Minato tried to speak. "Naruto, you must understand that." Naruto cut him off. "It's not bad enough that you ruined my childhood, prevented me from ever finding friends, and basically condemned me to an unending hell, but now you are using me as this damn village's business transaction. There might not be a single girl in this village that will ever like me in that sense, but there might be girls outside of Konoha's borders who will see past my affliction. Naruto, please, my son." Minato was shut up by a massive dose of killing intent that was clearly amplified by the Kyuubi. "I am not your son. The damn charade is getting real lying annoying. I am tired of having to wake up in the middle of the night because some stupid Junin comes knocking on my door saying he is offering to train the Yondaime's son. I am also sick and tired of not being able to walk outside anymore because a bunch of fangirls try to rape me. Enough with being charade." The glass window behind the desk shattered as Naruto let up on the killing intent. "Naruto, if you won't believe me, who will you believe? If I get Sarutobi in here, will you believe me?" Minato saw Naruto's head fall as he snorted in disgust. "The Sandaime, he is as much a cause of my pain as you are." Minato and Kushina were confused. What did he mean? "Naruto, what do you mean? Sarutobi told us he did everything he could to protect you." Naruto scoffed. "Did everything he could to protect me? That's a laugh. I found out the truth about my Gigi 3 days before the finals." Flashback. Naruto was walking up the stairs of the Hokage Tower after he got out of the hospital. He was going to ask Gigi to see if he can give him some scrolls to train with. At the very least he can get a jutsu that will be good against Neji. Naruto arrived at the office and was about to knock on the door when he heard someone talking. "Sarutobi, you have to kill that wretched demon, it is a threat to our village." Naruto recognized the voice as the crabby female elder. "I concur, if that demon is allowed to grow stronger then our village is doomed." The other voice was clearly that of the old goat. "I will not kill Naruto. I have gone so far as to allow the villagers to beat him without persecution, that is as far as I will go. I will not kill him, even if he was the Kyuubi, which he isn't. The risk of Kyuubi getting out is too damn high. I have allowed the villagers to beat him in hopes that he will become submissive, thus supplying Konoha with a powerful shinobi if he ever learns to use the Kyuubi's chakra. That is too risky, killing him would be more efficient, there is too much of a chance that he will betray us. That's enough, my decision is final." Dismissed. Naruto backed away from the door, a pained look in his eyes. His Gigi allowed them to beat him. Naruto turned and ran down the stairs, heartbroken that the only person who he thought of as family was just as bad as the villagers that abused him. Naruto had not bothered to go to the office at all. If the Sandaime was going to allow him to be hated, then he was going to hate him in turn, eye for an eye after all. End flashback. Minato and Kushina were shaking in rage. The Sandaime allowed for Naruto to be beaten, to be ostracized, just so he would be submissive. "Naruto, I am so sorry my son." Naruto raised his hand and glared at Sarutobi, his eyes turning blood red. "Stop. I never want to hear about you being my father ever again. I am done with this damn charade." Naruto turned to leave, but he was stopped by Kushina who wrapped him up in a hug. "Naruto, my baby, please, we aren't lying, please will you, crack." Naruto pulled himself from her grip and backhanded her. Minato rushed to his wife's side. He looked up about ready to scold his son, but stopped when he looked into his eyes. Kushina looked up and saw the hate-filled eyes of her son. His eyes turned blood red and slitted as he glared at her. "I am through with your bullshit, this is my last warning, cut the charade." Naruto pulled out a kunai and pointed it at his gullet, "or I release the fur ball." Naruto walked out of the office leaving a sobbing set of parents. The Suna contingent watched as Naruto left the office. He turned his head and looked at them. "Find someone else to be your business transaction, I will have no part in it." He turned and walked away leaving a shocked Temari and 2 fuming brothers. "How dare he do that to my Nei-chan? Mother will have your blood for doing that to my sister." Temari fell to her knees. True, this was basically a political marriage, but she had demanded that Naruto be the one she marries. She had fallen for the blonde during the Chunin exam break. She remembered how she fell for him. Flashback. Temari was walking out of a dango shop after she had finished her meal. The waiter had been hitting on her, and she wanted to get the hell out of there. She was walking to her apartment when she suddenly heard something crash. She turned around and looked to find a cat eating from a dumpster. She sighed as she turned around, and was smashed in the face with a frying pan. She tumbled back as she looked to find it was the same waiter from before. "Oh, feisty, I like 'em like that." The waiter walked forward as Temari reached for her fan. Before she could even swing her fan, the waiter had shunshined forward and delivered a terrible kick to her stomach. She collapsed as the man grabbed her hair, undoing most of her hair ties. "I bet you're wondering how I was able to do that. Me, a lowly civilian, I am actually a missing nin from the now destroyed Heat Devil village. I came to this village a year ago hoping to find some fun, and lo and behold I find Asuna kunoichi. How delightful, you will be my 7th victim this year." The man reached and tore off Temari's shirt as he began to undo his buckle. Temari was about to get up when she felt a terrible pain in her side. "Oh, how do you like my little poison? I injected it into you when I first attacked you. In a few minutes you will be overcome by the second part of the toxin, a very delightful aphrodisiac." The man walked forwards and climbed on top of Temari. "I am going to enjoy this." The man reached for his pants and began to pull out his member while Temari was scared to death. "No, my virginity, I wasn't supposed to lose it like this. I was supposed to lose it to a man I love, please no." The man was now pulling off her panties. "Hey jackass." The waiter looked up as he was smashed in the face with a nearby trash can. He fell over and looked up, his eyes widening when he saw that Naruto Uzumaki was releasing a lot of killing intent. Oh shit. He ran down the alleyway. But Naruto grabbed his shirt and threw him into a set of trash cans. Temari cringed when he saw the man's face get smashed up. Naruto grabbed a trash can as the man tried to crawl off. Come one. He smashed the trash can on the man's back. The guy collapsed as Naruto turned him over and began punching his face. "What's your problem, pal?" Crack, that was the nose. Crunch, his eye. Smash, the cheek. Crunch, that was the nose again. Naruto pulled the man's face up and pulled his fist back. "Come up here." And slammed his fist right in the guy's jaw. Naruto and got up, and then kicked the man in the ribs. He walked over to the trembling Temari. "Hey, are you alright? Let's get you home." Naruto reached out to Temari but she flinched away. "Sorry, look." Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out a couple wads of cash. "Here's some money, go get yourself some clothes, something to eat, just stay out of the alleys." Naruto got up, and Temari lost consciousness. End flashback. She had woken up the next morning in her apartment with Baki-sensei saying some blonde-haired kid brought her here as carefully as possible. When she saw the blonde kid again she was ashamed of herself for being a part of the invasion, and the fact that he showed them mercy despite them being enemies showed he had an enormous heart. Temari fell to the floor crying, but she looked up defiantly. "I will not have anyone else but you, Naruto Uzumaki." 3 days later, Team Kurenai had gathered in the Yondaime's office, Minato trying as hard as he could from not going on about how Naruto is his son. He would have to try a different approach, but for now he had to give out their missions. "Team Kurenai, you will be heading an escort mission. The client will arrive in the shopping district this afternoon." Team Kurenai nodded their heads and walked out. Naruto was the first to leave as the other two followed suit. Minato looked down at his desk, but he snapped his head up when he heard knocking on the door. "Enter." The door opened to reveal the last person he wanted to see. "What do you want, Kakashi?" Kakashi looked down so as to avert Minato's gaze. "Yondaime-sama, I was hoping if Minato stopped him before he could continue. "Kakashi, if this is another one of your attempts to get Team 7 reformed, that you are wasting your time, go back to training your precious Uchiha. I will not let you stunt my son's growth." Kakashi spoke up in defense. "Yondaime-sama, I have no intention of stunting Naruto's growth. Look," he pulls out a scroll. "On here is every jutsu I know. I was hoping to teach them to Naruto." Minato cut him off again. "Was this before, or after you learned he was my son?" Kakashi grew silent as he looked down. "I thought so, now get out of my sight." Minato was about to return to his work when Kakashi fell to his knees and began to practically beg. "Minato-sensei, please, let me make amends for my mistakes, please let me help your son." Comma. Minato glared at Kakashi with a sneer and a look of disgust. "You've done enough, now get out." Kakashi got up and left the office as Minato looked at the mission form. A- rank mission. Objective: Protect the actress Yukie Fujika's on her way to Yuki no Kuni. Chapter 6. Naruto sat waiting on a bench outside a movie theater. The movie was about a princess and it was played by their objective, Yukie Fujika's. Naruto was twirling a kunai in between his fingers. Off to the side Hinata was looking at Naruto, while Yakumo was drawing in a notepad. Naruto finally stopped twirling the kunai and threw it into the ground. Alright, we have been waiting here for almost an hour. They should have been here half an hour ago. Where is the damn client? Over the past months since Naruto's heritage was revealed, his patience has become shorter, and it was starting to affect those around him. Yakumo became extremely frustrated with the blonde, mainly because she was tired of his temper. And Hinata had become more withdrawn, thinking that if she spoke her true feelings to Naruto he would utterly reject her. It wasn't a surprise. Last week Naruto rejected a girl so harshly that he sent the girl home crying. It was when Hinata herself was about to ask Naruto out. She had spent a whole week gaining the resolve to ask him out. But when she saw how cruelly he rejected her, all that resolve faded away into nothing. Naruto was about to begin pacing, when the fence shattered as a horse ran through, with a woman on its back. Then about 6 more horses came running through the hole in the fence with armored samurai on back. Naruto quickly jumped on the wall. I'll get the woman, you two stop those samurai now. Naruto began jumping after the woman. Yakumo pulled out her drawing pad and quickly began to scribble. She then performed hand seals, Kurama Haijutsu, Mokusemusha. On the surface nothing happened, but inside the minds of the samurai, they were fighting against living trees, but in reality they were fighting each other. The samurai slashed at the trees and only ended up knocking each other out. Hinata and Yakumo watched as the samurai fell to the ground. They walked up to them, but stopped as Kurenai shunshined in front of them, nervously scratching the back of her head. Team, I got some news. Meanwhile, Yukie Fujika's continued to gallop through the streets, knocking over carts and sending the civilians scattering. She was about to turn down an alley when she saw an orange blur jumping over her with a scowl on his face. She turned down an alley and ended up right in the middle of a festival. She charged through, scattering civilians and sending cart owners running as she headed for an exit. Naruto meanwhile was pulling out a set of balls with a rope attached to them. He jumped higher in the air and began to swing the bolus in the air, and then he threw it at a nearby wooden pole. The pole shattered and fell over, the sign it was holding blocking the entrance. Yukie did not stop and plowed directly through the paper sign. Naruto cursed, damn it, this girl is going to cause more damage if I don't stop her. Naruto leapt off the building and landed directly in her path. The woman seemed to speed up. Naruto jumped and leapt on the horse's back. Yukie looked at the blonde with aggravation. Get off my horse. She whipped the reins and the horse began to gallop faster. Naruto looked at the woman and snarled. Idiot, stop this damn horse, you are going to. Naruto looked and saw that there was a group of young children playing in the road. Naruto reached further for the reins. The children saw the incoming horse and they began to scream as they ran out of the way, but a young 3-year-old girl was too shocked to move. She began to quiver as the horse came closer. Naruto almost reached for the reins but they slipped out of his grasp. The girl was only a few dozen feet away. He then cursed to himself, damn it. And then grabbed Yukie. Yukie was shocked by the sudden contact, and she was even more shocked when Naruto yelled as he pulled her back, along with the reins. The horse felt the reins being pulled and reared back just before he hit the girl, and then slammed its feet on the ground. The girl slowly opened her eyes and saw the horse not even a foot away from her. She scurried back and ran to her mother who had just come running out of the house when she saw the danger her daughter was in on the second floor. Yukie got off the horse, the kids saw who she was and began to run up to her screaming, "Can I have your autograph?" Or, "Can you sign my shirt?" The reactions varied. Yukie was about to shout at them, when the back of her shirt was suddenly pulled back, her along with it. She was dragged to face a certain blue-eyed Jinchuriki. What the was that stunt, you ignorant bitch? Are you blind? Because unless you are, there is no excuse for what you did while you were on your horse. Yukie tried to struggle but she was thrown to the ground as Naruto pointed to the damage she had done. You were lucky those people moved, or you could have injured somebody. Or worse. He looked behind her. Just look at that girl. She turned around and saw the terrified girl, who was shivering in her mother's embrace. If I hadn't stopped your damn horse, that girl would be seriously injured, or dead. Yukie flinched as Naruto snapped at her. She then stood up and began to walk off, but Naruto grabbed her arm and forced her to look at him. Now listen here, Yukie Fujika's. Her eyes widened. You are coming with me. You are being guarded by my team on your way to Yuki no Kuni. He began to drag her off, but found that she would not budge an inch. He turned to glare at her, and ended up getting sprayed in the eyes with mace. He clutched his eyes as she ran off. Naruto opened his eyes and saw her blurry form run off. Damn bitch. He ran after her as she ran into the shopping district. Back with Team Kurenai. Kurenai had finished explaining that the samurai were actors, and that the person that they were chasing after was the client. The three kunoichi sighed. Kurenai then brought up a question that had been bothering her: where is Naruto? The two girls were about to answer. Get back here, Yukie. The three sweat dropped. Over there. The three ran in the direction of Naruto's yells. Back with Naruto. Naruto was running through the shopping district looking around for Yukie. Damn, where the hell did she go? He ran past a store. Not even a second later, Yukie came out wearing a feather boa and a pair of sunglasses. She looked and saw Naruto heading towards another store before she ran down the street, never noticing Naruto pop into smoke. She looked back and then ran down an alley. She knocked over a few trash cans. She headed down the alley until she lost her breath. She sighed to herself, thank Kami I lost him. She looked around, and then she saw a bar. I am a bit parched. She walked into the bar, not noticing the part of the wall that suddenly wavered to show a blonde-haired shinobi. About 20 minutes later, Team Kurenai ran down the alley. Hinata was using her Byakugan to locate Naruto's chakra. She looked around, and saw a trace of his chakra on a wall next to a bar. She walked up to it and used her Byakugan to see if there was a trail. She did find a trail, and it led into the bar. Kurenai sighed, what is he doing in there? They walked into the bar, and was surprised at the sight. Sitting at the bar was Yukie Fujika's, and at a nearby table was Naruto, who was busy sipping a glass of sake. Kurenai walked up to Naruto and snatched the sake out of his hand. Naruto, what the hell are you doing? Naruto looked at Kurenai before he poured himself another glass of sake. Well, I was thinking that while I wait here for Yukie over there to get drunk enough to pass out, that I can enjoy a few bottles of sake. He was about to drink the sake when Kurenai slapped it out of his hand, shattering the cup and spilling the sake everywhere. What I mean is, why are you drinking sake? You are underage. Naruto looked up at Kurenai and grabbed the bottle of sake. Old enough to kill, old enough to drink, and have. He did not bother with a cup this time and simply chugged down the bottle of sake. He finally put down the sake bottle and wiped his chin before he placed it back down. He turned to the bartender. Hey, bring me a bottle of hot sake. The bartender looked at him. Which would you like, imported or our own recipe? Naruto got into a thinking pose before he spoke. What have I been drinking? The bartender took out a bottle of the same stuff he had been drinking and answered. You have been drinking our recipe. Naruto smirked. Bring me a bottle of your imported sake. Naruto sat back and looked as Yukie downed another cup of sake. Kurenai was fuming at this point. Naruto, I don't care if you are legally allowed to drink sake or not, don't need to deal with one of my students getting drunk. Naruto looked at Kurenai. Kyuubi filters the alcohol before it affects me, I don't need to worry about something as trivial as getting drunk. Naruto looked and saw a man talking with Yukie. He seemed to be pleading with her. Alright, it's taking too long for her to pass out, plan B. Naruto got up and walked up to Yukie. Yukie downed another cup of sake as Sandayu kept pleading with her. Yukie, we need you for this role, and no one else can play it. Yukie grabbed the sake bottle and began to swish it around. Oh, don't worry, this stuff happens all the time. The lead is replaced, the director replaced, it's just show business. She was about to down another gulp of sake. And this is my business. She turned around to see Naruto deliver a knife strike to her neck, effectively knocking her out. Meanwhile, Minato was digging through file after file, trying to find some ounce of proof that Naruto was his son, and that Naruto could not deny. He had gone through every last file, looking for Naruto's birth certificate. It was the only piece of proof he needed to prove Naruto was his son. He went through another batch of files and found nothing. On the other side of the office, Kushina was looking through the bookcase, hoping it might be in there. Minato sat at his desk, and then in a fit of rage threw all of the documents off the desk. God damn it, where the hell is that birth certificate? He pulled open the desk drawers and pulled out every paper, trying to find where the document was. Kushina finally stopped rooting through the bookshelf and screamed, "Fuck. At this rate we won't be able to prove he is our son until our death." She slammed her fist into a nearby table and smashed it to bits. She let out a frustrated sigh and sat on a nearby chair. Minato cursed, "All right, where the hell is that document? The only person who has been in this room since our deaths that would know where it is, would be Hiruzen. Now where did he put that damn document?" Minato was about to go through the documents again, thinking he might have missed it in his angered haste to find it, when the door to the office was slammed open, revealing Sasuke Uchiha. "I want you to train me." The two shinobi looked at Sasuke as if he had grown a second head. Minato glared at the Uchiha. "What right do you have to barge into my office, and isn't Kakashi training you?" Minato spat out the word Kakashi as if it were a poison. "He isn't good enough. At the rate he is training me I will never be able to kill my brother." Kushina snarled at Sasuke and snapped. "You have the strongest Jonin in the village teaching you exclusively. If that isn't good enough then I don't know what is." Sasuke looked at the woman with a malicious smile. Who else but the Yondaime Hokage himself? He looked at Minato who was now looking through the documents. "I will not train anyone except for my son. All my techniques are family techniques, no exceptions." Clearly Sasuke was not giving up. "Then adopt me until I kill my brother. I would make a much better son than that Dobi." Smash! Minato turned towards Sasuke and glared at him as he literally snapped the filing cabinet in half. "How dare you insult my son in my presence, Genin?" Sasuke shivered, but continued his tirade. "Oh please, the Dobi doesn't even believe he is your son. He has essentially forsaken you. The Dobi will never see you as anything more than the person who condemned him to hell." Minato tightened the grip on his kunai. "That baka was too pathetic to be worthy of your training. If you train me I will bring glory to your clan, whereas that Dobi would simply disgrace it." Sasuke was grabbed by the throat and slammed into the wall. Kushina tightened the grip she already had on Sasuke's throat. "You little wretch, if you ever insult my son again, I will kill you myself." She threw him out the door and slammed it shut. Minato sat at his desk and began to fiddle with one of his tri-pronged kunai, and then he slammed it right into his desk. He slumped into his chair. "I have scoured every part of this office, and I have not found a single trace of the birth certificate." He looked at his desk, and quirked an eye when he saw a piece of paper through the crack he made in the desk. He pulled out another kunai and began to use it to part the wood. Kushina saw what he was doing and walked over. She saw the papers and grabbed her own kunai as she began to part the wood along with him. Minato finally had enough and simply used his bare hands and tore the wood off. Crack, a resounding crack traveling through the air. He looked at the documents, and right on top was Naruto's birth certificate. He grabbed the papers with a great smile, yelled out, "Yes, here it is, now Naruto can't deny we are his parents." He was about to jump around the room, when he thought to himself, why was Naruto's birth certificate hidden in the desk? Unless, he looked at Naruto's birth certificate and set it aside. Kushina immediately picked it up as Minato looked at the first document, his blood boiling as he read it. "Sarutobi, you traitor." He slammed the documents on the desk as he barged out the office door. Kushina followed suit, wondering what was going on. She was so preoccupied with following Minato, that she never noticed the birth certificate land underneath the heater. With Naruto was carrying Yukie fireman style towards a boat that had docked. He had to deal with Sandayu saying he was too brutal on the princess. He had shut the old man up with a well-placed dose of killing intent. He was now standing in front of the ramp as he grumbled to himself, "Maybe I should not have knocked her out for so long. It would make moving her around a hell of a lot easier." He walked up the ramp before he headed to the sleeping area for her. He opened the door with his foot, and was quite impressed with the layout. The bed looked to be made out of an exotic material, the sheets looked to be made out of the finest cloth, and the surrounding furniture looked to be imported from outside countries, probably from across the seas. He walked over to the bed and set Yukie on the bed. He then covered her up with the lovely satin sheets. He looked at her for a moment, and then he noticed her necklace. He took a closer look at it. It was engraved with dozens of kanji, and it had an active chakra in it. He shrugged his shoulders and turned to leave, walking out the door. Back in Konoha, 20 minutes later. Hiruzen Sarutobi was reading his old war diary. It was a detailed record of every battle he took place in up to the Kyuubi attack, and he was now adding the Tsunoto invasion of Konoha to the archives of his journal. He had finished writing the last entry, when that same feeling he had been getting for the past month kicked back in. He rubbed the bruise on the back of his head. After Orochimaru delivered a strike to the back of his head, his memory has been less than favorable. Soon, however, that issue would be at an end, so long as his plans did not fail. Now if he could only remember where he placed those plans. He set his journal aside and headed towards the kitchen. Crash! The windows shattered as a dozen Anbu leapt into his home. Sarutobi was so startled that he did not see 3 of the Anbu performing hand seals until it was too late. He was about to reach for the kunai he always kept at his side, when he realized he could not move. Damn, what happened? He looked with his peripheral vision, and saw 3 shadows extending towards him. He looked to see that Anbu Shika, Nezumi, and Kumori were holding a rat sign for the Kage main no jutsu. Just as he hissed at the fact he had been so easily captured, the front doors slammed open to reveal an extremely pissed Minato and Kushina. Minato walked forward as the rest of the Anbu geared themselves to fight, while others pulled out chakra restraining cuffs. Minato stood in front of Sarutobi and snarled, "Here isn't Sarutobi, I, as the Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, hereby arrest you, for treason." He flicked his hand as the Anbu restrained Sarutobi with the cuffs, and then shunshined to the last place any traitor would want to be in chains, Anbu Headquarters Interrogation Department. Okay, admittedly, not my longest chapter, but this was all I could come up with at the moment. If you have any ideas, let me know. Seriously, I need some help here. I cannot come up with much right now. School is hell as it is and I am not able to come up with things that do not seem cliché. Thanks for watching, friends. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe, and tell me your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.